Hokey pokey weirdos, I'm Rev, and I love Transformers, if ya couldn't tell. And I have been absolutely obsessed with Transformers since I was about 8 years old in 2007. Not because of the Michael Bay verse, but I eventually did get into that one as well. My obsession of Transformers actually stemmed from the 2007 animated series of Transformers. And my favorite character in that series was Bumblebee. I absolutely love that Bumblebee in this series is a teeny tiny, almost, I think he wants to be a Fiat or something similar. He's such a small car, and he's also a cop car, so he's got his little light on the top, and it's so cute. And with Transformers 1 finally being available to stream, rent, or buy, we're going to watch it for my birthday, and I'm super excited. I thought it would be a good time to tell the story of my Bumblebee costume that never was. As well as go over a future project I hope to get to, inspired by the Bumblebee costume that never panned out. So, welcome to my world of cosplay shenaniganery. The Bumblebee costume I never really got around to finishing. I started somewhere around 2017 to 2018. And this was also the costume that I did just before Lucy Lacemaker, as well as overlapping with Lucy Lacemaker's build. I was inspired by seeing a video of a dad making a transformable Optimus Prime Halloween costume for his kid. And I found a number of videos like this soon after, because I was going down a crazy rabbit hole of Transformers costumes trying to figure out what I wanted to wear for the next convention. And while I thought the 80s style Optimus Prime was amazing, Optimus is not necessarily my personal vibe, even though I do love the character. So I went with Bumblebee from the 2007 series to make a transformable, cardboard Transformers costume. I first started the build with a whole bunch of huge chunks of cardboard, generally sizing them to my body, mostly a guesstimate on everything firstly, and then I would alter it to my body shape and size a little more so once I had the base structure done. And yes, I labeled every single one of my pieces. Even before I was making costumes more professionally, which started in 2020, more so 2021, even before then, I was making sure I was labeling all of my pieces because I am type A like that. But eventually I got that cardboard base structure done, a general shape of a car, so that I could start sizing it down a bit to fit me. The concept with the transformable part was I was thinking something like if you see those Mario Kart or Vanellope Sugar Rush cosplays where they have their car on suspenders. But for my Bumblebee cosplay, those suspenders were super small so that it could flip all the way up and over on those teeny tiny suspenders. Since it was 2018, I only had just gotten my first job, and I was still figuring out what financially I could manage, so this thing is made out of cardboard and Dollar Tree items. I cut out some headlight slots out in the front so I could put flashlights inside, and I was going to use blue lenses from those giant kooky sunglasses for parties. I was also going to do that with the red brake lights in the back, where I would have flashlights back there as well, and with red lenses from those similar glasses. Next, I started working on the wheels. I found that those giant paper plates were the perfect size based upon how small I am, so therefore how small the vehicle had to be, and I cut those out of really thick poster board. Sadly, I did not get any decent pictures of them before I got rid of them, so you can see them in the background here. I had even managed to paint them and detail them a little bit before I'd given up on this project. Sadly, I don't have those pictures and I wish I did. Next, I made the arms and the feet. These were a little more of a challenge for me because I was trying to figure out how to get them to stay on me since they were so big and clunky. Eventually, I went to Ace Hardware and I found those garden prong things that are made of really stiff wire and managed to bend them into place, but they were moldable enough that I could change their positioning if it ended up not quite being correct.
I bent the staples at a 90-degree angle so that the tails were flush against the cardboard and I could duct tape them down. Then the side with the head of the staple was flush against my wrist and could help hold my wrist in the center of the box. Then I laced nylon webbing through the staples like you would with the grommets of a corset, so it essentially turned into a bracelet.
And with his arms, I even tried to make the Stinger blasters. I tried to layer them kind of like how the plastic lightsabers are layered so that you can swing them out. In those rings, I had 3, I believe, blaster rings so that I could flick my hands like you would with one of those lightsabers and they'd come out. However, I hadn't completely figured out that mechanism before I had to move and deconstruct this thing. These days, I would be making everything out of upholstery and EVA foam, which would have made this so much easier, but I did not have that supplies at the time. Although, all of the hands and feet mock-up pieces were cutouts similarly to how you would make EVA foam armor. And look, I've labeled all my pieces again. Good job, past me. Over the course of a number of months that I was working on this project, I did lose about 10 pounds because I had cut processed sugar out of my diet, which meant I had to slim down the whole costume, otherwise it looked ginormous on me. Next, to cover up all the cardboard ripply texture, I was going to cover this car in poster board. However, all of the poster board at the Dollar Tree, if it was yellow, it had some sort of imperfection on it. So I went with white. That way I could spray paint everything one solid yellow, and if there were any imperfections in it, it would be my own fault, instead of being at printing fault for the factory that ships poster board to the dollar store. Finally, I got to a point where you can actually see the slot where my head is supposed to come through, and how the front half is supposed to sit really large on my chest, and then flip up to be able to transform. And then the larger back half would sit along my back and it fit perfectly under my armpits and down to my hips. Then the pieces for the arms and legs could be included. And yes, I used a bunch of blankets and body pillows to hold this thing up while I was making it. I also love that you can see all of my rulers, protractors, pencils, and everything else that I was using for the supplies in the background. And that's about as far as I got on that costume. I got it completely covered in poster board. It was made, the wheels were painted, but the car still needed to be painted, and I still needed to do all of the detailing to actually make it look like Bumblebee. I'd even gotten one of those really big red jars from the dollar store that I was also going to put a flashlight inside to be his little siren light on the top. But
the friend that I was going to the con with was my ride and canceled 2 days before the con.
I moved multiple times after making this piece, and knowing that I was moving, I felt like it was not worth carrying around a giant unfinished car that I didn't feel like I was actually going to finish anytime soon. On top of the fact that I knew I'd prefer to make it out of EVA foam now, so I deconstructed the whole thing, broke it down, recycled as much of the cardboard as I could, even though most of it was covered in hot glue and could not be recycled. So now, after having destroyed this thing and being a little sad and missing it, I still want to cosplay 2007's Bumblebee at some point. And yes, I would want to make it out of EVA foam now, and I also don't really feel like it needs to be a transformable costume. I'd much more prefer to look like that 9-foot-tall Transformer robot than the little car. Also, the transformable car was much more of a challenge for me back in 2018 than it would be now. These days, it actually feels a little too simple for me, and I'd prefer to take the challenge of looking as much like the robot as I can.
What I've been planning for a new Bumblebee where I actually look like the robot is that I've been working on a Pidge Voltron armor cosplay, and once I finish that, I could very easily reuse all the patterns from that to build off of to make Bumblebee, because all of Pidge's armor pieces are tightly fitted to my body, which means I could easily build off of them and make a more bulky structure outside of those pieces once I have them as a base. Please let me know in the comments if you'd like to see this costume sooner rather than later.
And with the concept of the costume kind of done and over now, Because I've been obsessed with Bumblebee ever since I was about 8, my family has regularly joked that Bumblebee is my boyfriend. And so much so to the point that when we went to Boondocks, that kind of Chuck E. Cheese type of place, except it's more of a 14 plus demographic, there was a Transformers video game that was shaped and looked like Bumblebee. You know those really big games that are normally like boxes and usually horror games? Well, there was a Transformers version of it where you have those 2 cannons in front of a seat and you pew pew at all the bad guys inside the box. With that game looking like Bumblebee, the back of it where you could look in the window and see people playing the game were the windows on his chest, and then his shoulders and head were above that. It was actually a really good sculpture of him too. And when my brother saw that, he's like, come here, come here, come here, come here. So he picked me up and put me on top of Bumblebee's shoulder, and then I hugged my arms around Bumblebee's neck for a picture. Then my mom's like, no, wait. Give him a kiss. So I kissed this Bumblebee sculpture on the cheek, and not only my mother was taking a picture of this, a whole bunch of parents who had their cameras out, or phones out, at Boondocks were taking pictures of me sitting on Bumblebee's shoulder, hugging him, and giving him a kiss on the cheek. Absolutely ridiculous, although quite fun. And if you made it through this whole video with me, I greatly appreciate it, because those watch hours are super important to content creators these days. And please remember those subs, comms, thumbs, and a ding. You can support me on Ko-fi and Patreon. And welcome to the madness. What is this floof doing? So I kissed for it to look like the 9. I'd much more prefer to look like that 9-foot. Why is that so hard to just say? Get some water and try again.